All right. So we have already discussed in depth what we can do in the leading, warmer, and the elicitation stages of the lesson. We've seen a couple of very interesting ideas that work both in face-to-face lessons, but also in these remote tasks that we can engage our students in. So we are going to move now on to a very important stage of the lesson, which is the presentation stage. The presentation stage is the moment in which we teach the new. Now, in normal circumstances, we do the teaching of the new in class. We do the teaching of the new with our students right in front of us, so we can see what's going on. We can see if they get it, if they are having any difficulties. In these very unusual circumstances, the presentation stage has to be done by us, but remotely. And as I was mentioning in Module 1, and I was restating in this Module 2, if you've got technology at your disposal and your students have technology at their disposal, of course, technology is going to help us present the new to our class. But as I said several times so far, this workshop is about analyzing all the different scenarios and understanding that this time we will probably have to present something new remotely to students who are very anxious and uncertain, and so are their families. So today we are going to discuss the very many considerations that we need to pay attention to when it comes to presenting the new remotely. So what is it that we can present through a remote self-study guide or through remote tasks? Well, we might be presenting new vocabulary. We might be presenting something new related to grammar. We might be presenting a new strategy. We might be presenting something new when it comes to any of the macro skills, something related to reading, something related to writing, something related to listening or speaking, or it might be very well that we are presenting a new concept. So what you will see throughout this module and the upcoming modules is that I will always be in favor of integrating everything that you are presenting and practicing and working on with your students. But let us go step by step. So let us get started by discussing some of the golden rules when it comes to presenting, all right? So let us go to vocabulary presentation. So I'm going to call these the golden rules. The things that we language teachers need to pay attention to. We need to bear this in mind, all right? What happens or how can we best present vocabulary if the new to be taught to our students happens to be words? Well, illustrations and images are always a must. They will always help students understand the meaning of new words in a much direct way. Something else that you can use to present vocabulary is using synonyms and antonyms or opposites. Not only will this enlarge their vocabulary, but it will help students make connections, like connect one word with another. And this type of vocabulary activities in which students have to classify and put together, they really benefit vocabulary acquisition. Something else that you can do to present vocabulary is provide examples. And when you do, make sure that the examples bear in mind how old the students are. It's really very important that students understand the concept of a word by means of reading the example, all right? Definitions are also a good idea. You have to be very careful with definitions, because one of the problems I have had in the classroom is that sometimes you allow students to work with dictionaries, online dictionaries or traditional dictionaries, and sometimes the dictionary entry is even more difficult than the word that the students cannot cope with. So if you're going to provide definitions, make sure that the definitions are clear enough to help our students work out the meaning of a word. Um, a possible a possible way of dealing with vocabulary has to do with translation. The reason why you've got an exclamation mark is because I think that we can use translation, and sometimes it's pretty valid, but there are so many ways of introducing vocabulary that I would leave translation as a last option. But I've seen teachers sometimes in face-to-face lessons wasting a lot of precious time trying to avoid the use of Spanish, when maybe just giving students the Spanish word is as simple as it can be, and that would be it. So I insist, it is a valid way of dealing with vocabulary, but with so many other options, I would leave it for the bottom of the list. And what I have highlighted here is how important it is that whatever way we use to introduce vocabulary, we never forget it is critical that we contextualize the presentation of vocabulary. When introducing vocabulary, both in face-to-face lessons and also remotely, I love using couples. And when I say couples, I'm talking about working with words association. So this is what I was saying before. You can have couples of words because they are synonyms, or because they are antonyms, or simply because they are related somehow. All right. So I can have a mixture of words, and I can put together carrot and potato because they are vegetables, and I can put together brother and sister because they are members of a family. Not necessarily do they need to be synonyms or antonyms, all right? Using the strategy tell it like it is because you can model or demo teach how to explain the meaning of a word by means of, for example, describing what you want to define, saying X, Y, and Z are examples of, using exemplifying as a strategy, maybe drawing. All these techniques really get students to understand there are different ways of recording new vocabulary and making words their own. Using the root of the issue, okay, the root of the issue is understanding that there are always root words, and that by understanding the root word, you can form new words. This is for more advanced learners, but valid to mention anyway. Word spiders, I love that really very much. You can use spidergrams like the ones we analyzed before, and you can have a word like in the body of the spider, and all the legs might be words related to that central word. I want you to remember that in terms of vocabulary acquisition, it is really, really very important to get students to work with words that have something in common. That's why I'm also underlining here lexical sets and lexical items. So when you present vocabulary in context and you are dealing, a lexical set would be, for example, farm animals, and the lexical item is cow. Another lexical item is sheep. Another lexical item is horse. All right? So the lexical set and the lexical items. This question of grouping words together really, really benefits vocabulary acquisition. And I'm showing a couple of examples, all right, where you've got the root word in the middle and you've got the definition, and you can sketch what that word is, provide a couple of examples, and then use the new word in a sentence. That graphic organizer works wonderfully with students. And then this is an example of couples where we've got cheap and expensive, for example. Other very good things that you can do when presenting vocabulary is using vocabulary graphic organizers. For example, you've got these circles in which we have categories within the world of animals. So students have to think of mammals or amphibians, a fish or reptiles. So this is the type of classification and sorting type of vocabulary activities that are so useful, all right, to do both in the classroom when we've got our students there, but also the type of vocabulary presentation tasks that we can engage our students in. And of course, you've got classifying by sorting into circles, as in the first example, or you can even classify words into different columns of a chart, for instance. And when you present vocabulary, among the golden rules that you need to remember is that the more visual it is, the closer it is to students' reality when you provide examples, the more you group together words. So you can use flashcards, use visuals. I'm giving you a couple of examples because we have a tendency to think that flashcards are always visual, but you have an example over there where you've got cards with a word on one side and the definition on the other side. I really love working with those types of cards with older students. And for those of you who really have technology at your disposal, and that is the case of your students as well, remotely now, there's plenty of wonderful videos. You can send them the link to a video where vocabulary is presented. The advantage of that is that students will be able to see the words presented in a context, and they will have the possibility to listen to the way the word is pronounced, and some videos even provide the possibility for students to repeat, listen and repeat, which is so important. As I was mentioning before, if students have the possibility to access a cell phone and they've got Wi-Fi access or internet access, they can watch these videos. They are short, sweet. Normally, they do not last more than 3 minutes, and they will have the presentation of vocabulary. It's going to be very visual, very clear, and as I said before, they will have the possibility to listen to the pronunciation of the new words. And of course, an extra way to mention when it comes to vocabulary presentation is bear in mind that you can also, with older students, but I guess it has to do with the complexity of the language mostly, you can include new words in a text, for example. So you are contextualizing the words by embedding the words in a text or a situation. You can also use comic strips where the new words are being used in a very clear context, and something that I really love working on, both in face-to-face classrooms, and I've seen that remotely there's also a possibility of that, is having word walls. So you can send students a template like the ones that you've got on the screen for students to record the vocabulary, the new words that they are learning, and students can feel free to record the new words in any way they want. So they might even resort to an example or a synonym, an antonym, just a very clear drawing. So they keep their own glossaries, their own vocabulary, word walls or lists, and that's how they keep the new words that they are learning. All right. So this is how we present vocabulary, and a couple of golden rules to remember, which work very nicely in face-to-face lessons and also remotely.